Hey folks, this is Alex with the Community Project in collaboration with KGNU. Over the last year, we've made it our mission to try to understand the homeless situation within Boulder County. We've had the opportunity to volunteer with 4 local nonprofits that provide services to the unhomed community. We've been fortunate to build relationships with truly incredible people, both providing and receiving services. And what we've learned is as inspiring as it is heartbreaking. Through this series of conversations, we'll attempt to impart our experience onto you, our community. Thank you for your time and attention. This is Ground Up. On today's episode, we speak with 2 insightful individuals who work with the State Opioid Response, or SOR grant, Victor King and Harold Najelski. Through addiction and the hardship of life on the streets to thriving and uplifting those who are still experiencing street life, these gentlemen are not just examples of true human resilience and uncommon compassion, but in my opinion, are the leaders we need in this war that is homelessness. We enter the interview as Vic is getting me up to speed on the SOR grant and what a peer support professional is.
The SOR grant is a state opioid and stimulant response grant. It's a $44 million grant that addresses stimulant use and opioid use in Colorado. Every state gets their cut of money from the federal government, so they're called the state opioid response grants. And so the $44 million is Colorado's slice of that. And I'm part of the recovery coach managers, the peer support team under that grant. I supervise a statewide team of about 14 to 16 peers who work at about 9 different agencies. So I'm the mentor and, one of their supervisors. And then the other part of my role is I'm a trainer. So I teach all the courses needed for someone to be a state certified peer. And under the grant, I'm able to teach those classes at no cost.
What is peer support?
Peer support has simply been there, done that, but that's not what we do. So peer support professional is what we do.
Okay.
You can be a peer in anything, but that's not what is needed. And so a peer support professional is lived experience plus. So you have the lived experience, and then you add in the training, the supervision, the oversight, the work experience, and that allows you to get a state certification. And you're basically a mental health professional at that point. You can bill for services, you can work with people in a variety of settings, but it's not just lived experience, but it's a lived experience plus, and that's what separates peer support from a peer support professional.
Okay, so lived experience is peer support. Anyone with lived experience in any sort of
being on this earth, we all have that lived experience.
We can help people be human in that scenario.
Yeah.
Okay, but when we're talking about peer support, these are people that have been on the street for a certain amount of time. Does that matter?
So a peer support professional is someone who has an experience with mental illness and they're in a state of recovery, substance use issue and they're in a state of recovery, or neither one of those, but they live with a family member or they support a family member with a mental health issue or a substance use issue that also qualifies them as peer support. For example, you could say, I've never had a drop to drink in my life, but I live with my father who is an alcoholic, and you're qualified under that sort of lived experience. So It's 3 different categories.
What do you guys cover in your trainings?
So there's 60 hours of training, and it's basically like what you need for like an associate's degree at a community college. So you cover the basics of what peer support is. For example, it's not sponsorship, it's not case management. It's something in between where you walk beside people, but also you're knowledgeable of the resources. You take an ethics training. And then suicide prevention is usually part of that. Motivational interviewing. A lot of trauma-informed trainings can fall under that umbrella. But usually these courses cost anywhere to $300 to $500. And so it creates a financial obstacle for anyone trying to enter that field. And so that's why my grant does these classes at no cost.
Harold works with Victor as a peer support specialist under the SOR grant and is currently the only funded staff under the grant for Boulder County. Harold now explains what it's like to be a peer support professional, as well as his plans for increasing his capacity to help.
I'm the only one in Boulder County at the moment. Okay. There's one that's coming that's part-time that's also going to be help working on it. But basically, I work the entire Boulder County and addressing people on substance use with opiates or stimulants.
Harold, to me, it sounds like you need to be on stimulants if you have to cover the entire Boulder County. That one person for the entire county? Or?
Yeah. Well, yeah. Under the state opioid response.
Okay.
Yes.
Do you think that's enough?
I have the saying. There's a saying in recovery. It's called "One's too many and 1,000's not enough."
Mm.
And I believe that one person out there suffering is too many, and 1,000 of us out there helping them is not enough.
We were talking earlier when we were outside about how dirty your car was because of your recon missions or your retrieval missions, I guess, huh?
Yeah. Yes.
You were up in Nederland and in the back roads and 4-wheel driving to get into people.
Yes.
How did they even contact you, and how did you know to go there?
I go out there and look for them.
You go into the woods and look for people.
Yep.
And what do you do when you find them?
I talk to them. Okay. I introduce myself to them, and start a conversation with them. Share with them some of my experience. I've been here. How can I help you today? I carry some supplies in my car. If you're out there with nothing, laying under a piece of plastic or something, I have some sleeping bags. And you just kind of start building trust and building a relationship. You're not going to get rescued on the first time that we meet. We got to get to know each other. It's a matter of, just talking, holding a conversation. Sometimes what people need is just for you to come and listen. And that's where it starts. And I want you to know that I'm out here to offer support to you. Maybe you just need some talk. Maybe you need some help getting through things. It's what can I do for you today? You're hungry. I got some food. I'm going to give you some food.
Yep.
You're cold or you need some shoes. I have sweaters. I do drives to get donations to get things. And, so I carry things in my car and I'm going to give it to you. If you're cold, I'm going to give you a sweater. You're wet, I have some ponchos. And we're going to talk,
Who
maybe
funds that?
Huh?
Who funds all the supplies?
I do snack and hygiene drives. And so I got these donations. And so then I get this stuff off Amazon.
Okay.
Hope is donate some things.
And
people that come here.
Shelter in Longmont.
Hope is a shelter in Longmont. They brought some things to me. There's people that come in here that donate things.
Okay.
I posted online asking for donations of things. And that's how I got my stuff.
Are you doing that through Recovery Cafe then?
I do that on my own.
You're working, you're not currently, but are you working under someone else's nonprofit and you're working on getting your nonprofit?
I'm working on my own nonprofit. I've established it.
Okay. Are you a 501c3 right now?
No, I'm in the process of all that right now. Yeah. Because of the changes that are currently going on, I've also had to implement some changes as I'm going through this, but I'm in the middle of that process now.
And what's your organization going to be called?
Our House.
Our House.
Yes.
Nice.
Yeah. And it's going to specialize in transitional housing, sober living, and PHP.
Tell me what transitional housing is in this model.
It's going to be a structured supportive environment for the people that are coming out of prison and jail.
Okay. Specifically for that?
Yeah. It's going to be, and there'll probably be some other people in there too. I'm set to expand. That's just what I'm starting out with.
Okay. Traditionally, I think there's halfway houses, right? That people can go into after prison. Is that?
Yeah, there is. But there's a waiting list for that.
Okay.
There's not enough resources. There ain't enough resources for everything all across the board.
Right.
No matter how you want to look at it.
Here, Vic discusses through his firsthand experience the challenge that people on the street face forming and maintaining social bonds, as well as the challenges faced by recently housed individuals when funding isn't available for services that they may require to stay successfully placed.
For every person that we get out of this situation, 2 people fall in behind them. So you're pulling one person out the river and you're like, well, the river is empty. You're like, nope, there's actually 3 more people in the river. And you're like, oh, shucks, what do I do? So there are successes, but there's limited resources and we can't help everyone. So at least in this county, for every person that we help, someone fills the spot they leave behind them.
It's a dangerous scenario on the streets, correct? I mean, it's
life or death, definitely. Yeah. So there's a community when you're on the streets. And so you can choose to be part of this community, or you can choose to isolate, just like you do in real life. You can talk to your neighbor, or you can say, I'm never going to talk to that person. I'm just going to go home and drive my car in the garage and don't even have to go outside to check the mail. Or you can say, I'm going to talk to my community. I'm going to invite them over for food. We're going to get together. And so on the unhoused community, there is safety in numbers, but there's also, you could choose the wrong person, or it's hard to trust people, especially if you've been victimized before. But there is, like I said, there were some fond times when I was unhoused because we had a community and there was a group of us that suffered together. And so in that, we were able to sort of protect each other, but just like almost with like siblings, we would also fight amongst each other. And, so in some essences, you're not calling the police when someone steals your stuff. You're just going to do street justice. And right. I'm going to go over there and handle this myself. But there is, for lack of a better word, a tribal community in the unhoused community where it's your chosen family and you see the people around you in the same situation as family, or maybe your family has even left you, or you've burnt all these bridges. And so that's my brother right there. We've been sleeping together under this bridge for the last 6 months, and I would die for him. And so they have to form these new connections. And so that's just a natural thing for humans to do.
Seems like that might be a pretty strong bond too, if you're living in this pretty much constant crisis scenario, in a fight or flight.
It can be. And so when someone dies, it's a tragedy that really rocks you to your core. When you see your brother, like you wake up one morning and he doesn't wake up, and then you've just lost a family member, and you've seen other family members get mistreated by the police, or you see your family members suffering without socks or shoes. You may want to, help them out just like you would another family member, but also you can't lose sight of who you were. Most of us weren't born in the streets. And so being able to reconnect to that without any form of trauma healing is really problematic. So you talked about substance use, but that's not the issue. The issue is a trauma that led them to the substance use. And that's not addressed. 30, 60, 90 days of sobriety is going to be pointless when I'm having nightmares every single night, or I have all these untreated things that my sobriety does not address. So it's a great pathway to start addressing those things, but trauma is what brought these folks to these situations. In some cases, it happens naturally, but the root of a lot of these things, mental illness, substance use, is really based on trauma. And that's something that everyone experiences in different ways. Yet, if you don't have the coping skills to deal with that, you will continue to suffer.
So to clarify, you're saying people don't end up on the streets because of substance abuse. They end up using substances because they're on the streets. Is that?
I would say if you talk to someone on the streets and you say, what happened to you? Go back to when they were 10, when they were 5, or even in the womb. Maybe they had a traumatic birth and they were on an incubator, things like that. So there are some traumas that we can remember, like, oh yeah, I remember my dad hitting me. But there's also traumas that happen earlier on before even the memory starts. So if you point to it in that sort of realm, the diagnosis isn't you're schizophrenic, or borderline personality. The diagnosis is, well, these things happened to you when you were 6 years old and you were in an unsafe environment, and ever since it's been worse ever since then. So the earlier you can intervene, the easier it is to get help. If you break your leg and you go to the doctor today, it's easier to get help. But imagine if you break your leg when you're 6 and you live 20 years with a broken leg. Sure, they can treat it, but they're going to have to re-break the bone, do all these other things. It's going to be so painful and so hard to do. And so just taking that analogy with mental illness or substance use, it started here, but then it blossomed and it grew to all these other things that are now so much harder to treat.
How would you take someone off the street? Let's say someone that's had trauma, has substance abuse issues. What course of action do we have here to help them?
There are many options, and sometimes the criminal justice system provides the most resources. So if you get off the street in a pair of handcuffs, then you're taken to jail. Then there's programs in jail, and then there's probation or parole. And they're saying, okay, now we're going to put you in this program, a drug court program or a family program, because you have these 16 crimes. And so that's one avenue. There's just a natural recovery. I talked to a person who said, a bolt of lightning hit the ground 30 yards in front of me, and I decided my life needs to change. So it can just happen naturally, right? There's also different systems people can choose to enter, whether it's some sort of treatment, some sort of housing, a short-term program that will get them back into the apartment that they just left, or maybe a longer-term program like Fort Lyons or some of these places where you can stay 6 months to a year. But I can't get someone off the streets. They really have to make a choice. And so we can fill out the application and do the paperwork, and you don't show up on that day, I'm going to go hunt you down and pull you into this program that you're not motivated for. So at some point, we just need to acknowledge people are making choices. And so some people like being in the river. Say, this is great. The water's fine. Leave me alone. It's my life. And some people, again, they're sick and tired. It's like, you know what? I can't survive another winter in the streets. I'm too old. And so, unfortunately, another thing that I've seen is we rescue people and they die in their housing in the first 1 or 2 years because it's all caught up to them because they spent 10 or 15 years out there. Now you're 55, you're 67. Now you're getting housed, and you haven't taken care of yourself for the last 20 years, and you're not able to live a quality of life. The life expectancy of someone who is unhoused is 55 years versus 70 for the rest of us. And so if I'm catching you at 55, you haven't been to the doctor in 10 years, this isn't treated, that's untreated. So it just makes it that much harder to help someone versus the prevention. Hey, let's get you when you're 21, when you're 18, when you're 25. Let's get you before you go to prison versus having to go to prison to get these programs and support.
So kind of an early intervention type of scenario?
The early intervention would be nice. And if appropriate, or if the resource is there, that can happen. But often what happens is we're just stuck in survival mode. We don't want people dying in front of us. So let's give them food. Let's give them clothes. Let's get them shelter, the basic needs. And a lot of resources go towards basic needs versus a lot of resources going towards prevention or recovery or housing or substance use treatment.
Are there any conditions that come along with housing?
No, unless you enter in a certain program, like we have the Bridge House Ready to Work program where there's a sobriety requirement. You have to also go to their classes. You have to meet with a case manager. You have to put some of your money into a bank account. You also have to work 20 hours a week. But that's just one program. We need 15 programs like that for different people at different skill levels. And so with some of this housing, the only requirement is just that you're there, Do
you think that's an efficient system?
I mean, it's voluntary. So people are making choices. Even if you're in permanent supportive housing, you have a choice to either interact with your case managers and ask for help, or just say, I got this on my own and I don't need your help at all. For some people that works because they can reconnect to who they were before. Now I'm indoors. Now I can paint and do all the things I loved. Or I've been out in the woods for too long and I have no idea what to do now that I'm indoors. And I don't trust these people. And I don't have a set of coping skills to deal with my boredom or these other things that I seem to be lacking. And some of these programs, at least in Boulder, they're brand new, right? They've only been around for a couple years. And sometimes the model is, well, we'll just call the police. We'll just keep calling the police versus, necessarily not your typical intervention, but at a certain point, giving people options to save them from themselves is what is needed.
Harold now elaborates on his plan to fulfill a gap in services in Boulder County, as well as sharing his experience on how hard it is to get people services that they desperately need. How can people help you get this going if they wanted to? What do you need the most?
Right now, donations.
Okay.
With the way things are going with the grants and everything, things are unstable. I'm working on gathering donations. I'm going to be putting together a fundraiser, and I just had to wait until I got a little bit farther where I'm at. And funding. It's all about funding. Every little bit helps. And it's worth it because you're helping somebody get a better start. It's giving them a hand up.
And when you're a 501c3, that'll be tax deductible. So
yes, it's going to be tax deductible. 100% tax deductible. Yeah.
What do you think the biggest barriers are, aside from funding, to get people the help that they need?
Okay, so a big major barrier is people that don't have documents, that lost their documents, or people that don't have documents. There's not much for people, undocumented immigrants. These things
we're not just talking about immigrants, though. We're talking about people that actually lost their IDs.
In general, people that lost their ID, lost all their documents, don't have a birth certificate, no social security card, no ID. You don't have any documents. There isn't a lot that can be done for you.
And if you're living on the street, that's just one time your backpack gets stolen, potentially.
Yeah.
And you're done.
Yeah. And that happens, and it's very real, and it happens
every day.
A lot.
Every day.
Yep. People get robbed for their stuff, too.
Yep.
There's a lot of things that are going on out there in the unhoused community, And, you lose your documents. You're in a real mess then. It's hard to get on housing. You need documents.
You can't even find work.
You can't even find work.
Nope.
What happens when you're going to get public assistance? You need some documents.
Yep.
Most of these programs, there's a couple that have scholarships, but if you don't have Medicaid or private insurance, you can't get in.
And you probably can't get Medicaid unless you have your documents.
Right, you need documents.
Ugh, it's a horrible cycle.
No, it's tough. There's very little that you can get, and with the way things are going, it's not becoming easier. It's going to become harder.
Yep.
A
lot harder here in a moment, harder. Potentially, right?
And this one big thing that I've noticed too, people that undocumented people, they have nothing. I scoured the areas trying to find help for them people. Addiction doesn't discriminate against anybody, and neither is being unhoused. And it's hard. I've dealt with a lot of people that are undocumented, and it's hard. Everything's very limited. And my big thing is this: people need a hand up more than they need a handout. By giving these people a handout, I'm a very passionate person. I hand stuff out to a certain extent, but I also see what happens with a lot of these handouts. And that kind of concerns me as well. But people need a hand up. There's nothing wrong with helping people sustain themselves or giving them food or whatever, or helping them get by. That's one thing.
We're keeping them alive until they can thrive.
Yeah, but they really need a hand up.
What does that look like?
What does that look like?
Yeah.
If we all came together and started working together, maybe donating more to all roads, or help creating more shelter for these people.
Folks, unfortunately, it looks like the reality of the situation is we are going to have more people on the streets soon. It's time to work together and find a solution. The street does not discriminate. It doesn't run a credit check, and it doesn't take coupons. The rent is free, but the cost is steep. The price is your dignity, safety, and happiness. These folks are our brothers, sisters, husbands and wives, and grandparents. They are family. They are you and I, and we deserve better. To find out more about Harold's work and how to help, visit ourhouseco.org. If you'd like to find out more or how you could assist, please contact us at info@thecommunityproject.org. To watch the full interviews or contribute to our fundraising campaign, check out our website at thecommunityproject.org. You can access our social media and donate from there. When contributing, click the donate button from the drop-down, select services. 100% of the donation specified as services will go directly to provide for individuals experiencing homelessness. We would like to thank our sponsors for helping make our outreach work possible. ARC Thrift Stores, El Dorado Springs, Super Team Protein Bars, Conscious Alliance, the Colorado Eyeglass Recycling Center, and the Denver Lions Club. And of course, KGNU. A special thank you to our service organization partners, Deacon's Closet, Colorado Friendship, Annie and Millie's Place, Sock It To 'Em, and City Pack. Ground Up's music was written and performed by Blaze Keene, a gentleman currently experiencing homelessness in Boulder County. You can access his music on BandLab at BlazeK_solo project. Thank you for listening, and I assure you folks, it is better together.